Today I'm going to be reviewing the Prosperity expansion for Dominion. How these reviews work is we're going to look at some of the things that Prosperity either introduces or places an emphasis on, some of the components that can make or break an expansion, how it feels when combined with others, high-end strength, low-end strength, high-end fun, low-end fun, and then some fluff at the end. And with each of these things, I'm going to give them an American letter grade, and then at the end, put them together into weighted average to compare. So, Prosperity, for some context, was the fourth expansion to Dominion. It was originally released in October 2010. There was a second edition in June of 2022. Do not go looking for the first edition stuff. It's bad. I don't know, if somebody's trying to offer you first edition Prosperity stuff for free, they're probably trying to smuggle drugs or something, but don't do it. The second edition has 25 Kingdom cards, which come along with some Platinum Colony cards, which are kind of these more expensive, more worth something base cards, Platinums above Gold, Colonies above Province. And then there's also Metal VP tokens, which are a new mechanic. There's calling it a returning emphasis on expensive cards, although Prosperity does have things that are more expensive than anything seen before it, including those Platinum and Colonies. And then it also places an emphasis on treasures, so we'll see a lot of yellow cards in here. Looking at expensive cards, there they are. There's Platinum, there's Colony. These are things that will appear in many a game with Prosperity. There's a recommendation that you do some randomization to make them more likely to do so. These are live above Province, they live above Gold, and so they're things that you will want to buy in games that they're in because they give more than Province and they give more than Gold. Aside from that, there's these 7-cost things that are these more expensive things than you've previously seen in Dominion and Kingdom cards. They tend to be maybe larger versions of stuff that you've seen before, like Expand is a larger version of Remodel, King's Court is maybe a larger version of Throne Room. That said, I'm not going to say that Platinum and Colony add the most to the game. There's nothing that really says, this game is different because of these. Sure it is. You have to maybe get them, but, Gold and Province are totally fine to deal with to begin with. And so I don't know that these actually end up adding a lot. The other problem with this expensive cards concept is that, these three over here, aside from King's Court, are kind of flops. They're not particularly strong cards, and so, it can be really questionable whether it's actually worth it to get them. Certainly King's Court is a big fun card, that will do you a lot. The most fun thing in Dominion is playing lots of actions, and King's Court certainly accomplishes that. The other thing about expensive cards that can be a little bit iffy is that, some of these numbers, if you really want 9, because Platinum's going to be the best thing in the Kingdom for you to be getting, it's hard to get to 9. It's lucky to get to 9, and then once you do it, this can kind of snowball. Once you have a Platinum in your deck, well, gosh, a Platinum and 4 coppers is going to get me another Platinum. It can kind of snowball that way. Similarly down here with King's Court, and even, when you really, really need it with Forge, if this is going to be the way that you trash, it can end up feeling a little bit more luck-based than when things are a little bit less expensive than this. And so, King's Court is the real highlight here. It's kind of a flop otherwise on expensive cards, and I'm going to give this a C+. Treasures. Treasures are generally not my favorite thing. I do tend to like actions a lot more. You can see that there's 9 treasures up here, and then there's some Kingdom cards that interact with treasures, whether it's turning your curses into treasures, drawing per treasure, or trashing out a whole bunch of treasures and maybe gaining some later. This is a cool card. But here's treasures. I'm generally not the biggest fan of treasures. I do like action cards, as I've said, but the good news with Prosperity's treasures is that a lot of them do really encourage action cards. Anything that really rewards connecting things together, even if they are treasures like Investment in Tiara, even Bank wants you to have a lot of treasures in hand for it. These are things that you have to do with action cards. Other than that, you have some treasures that make it easier to gain action cards or reward you for gaining action cards. And so, despite having this treasure theme. Prosperity's treasures do a pretty good job of making it so that you want to play the fun part of the game anyways. And so, these, I'm not the biggest fan of treasures, but it's definitely treasures done well. And so this is a B+. VP tokens. So VP tokens are these little metal tokens. You get them when cards say +1 victory point symbol, and at the end of the game they give you points. It's just like a green card, except that in this case it's a little silver token that goes, well, I guess it doesn't go on a mat anymore. It's a little silver token that goes in front of you. The first edition had mats. Get the mats if you can. That'll give an exception too. Anyways, these aren't it's an interesting concept, I guess, to be able to score in some other way that doesn't require you to put bad cards into your deck. But at the same time, the actual way that it does it here is a little bit off. Investment's never gonna get a lot. Monument is really slow to get going. Maybe this 2 coins is actually more important than the +1 VP when you're looking at Monument. Bishop's hard to use. You can't get it early, and then later on you have to be trashing good stuff to get it to work. And so the only one that you're really going to be able to score a lot with consistently is Collection. And then Collection dominates games a little bit. I think VP tokens in general are fine. It's just that the ones in Prosperity are maybe a little bit off. If you really like VP tokens, go look at Empires. So I'm giving this one a B-. Alright, let's look at some of the components of Prosperity. Attacks. Prosperity has 3 attacks. There's this kind of weakish discard attack. You put a card onto your deck. This also actually fits the treasure theme Clerk does, because if you imagine it, you can kind of play it non-terminally if it's in your starting hand. And so it's kind of like a silver that does something. Otherwise, it's definitely not a treasure. Charlatan is kind of interesting. Each other player gains a curse, but the curse is, it's going to give a coin for that. For that reason, it tends not to actually be that strong of an attack. Clerk can be pretty unpleasant, I should mention, just kind of slowing games down and for virtually no reason. It's not the most amazing thing for you, and it's certainly bad for your opponent. And then the last attack is Rabble, this top-decking thing that, when you're doing Rabble, you hardly ever care about the attack part, just because it's basically going to try to top-deck victory cards, and you don't want victory cards in your deck to begin with, and so, it usually ends up just being for the draw. This is not a great set of attacks. Charlatan's maybe a little bit of a highlight, but there's not very many of them. They don't do a whole lot. This is going to be down at a D for me. Alright, draw pieces. We're generally looking for quantity over quality. Prosperity kind of has neither. Prosperity definitely is low on the quantity. This is 7 cards out of 25. This is a problem with the treasure emphasis and expansions, is you have all of these treasures and then you don't have a way to actually play them. So in games with heavy prosperity, it can be really tough to draw, and so, the games end up kind of just being, here's my treasures. So that's not a good thing. That said, the villages, here, King's Court especially, King's Court is actually village and draw, if you really think about it. It's a decent set. Workers' Village will do stuff for you, King's Court will do stuff for you. The draw here all kind of sucks. Rabble somehow at +3 cards in this attack that you don't really want is the best draw card here. So that's not the most impressive. Low quantity, kind of low quality. That's going to be a C-. Alright, Payload. What are the cool things you can do with your deck? Well, we talked about there's a bunch of treasures. There's treasure gaining. There's also this card that rewards you for drawing Vault. We had it in the draw before, but it's ineffective at drawing. It's much more effective at if you draw some other way, then Vault can pay it off for you. Grand Market you can get a whole bunch of. It's this kind of peddler, or not peddler. You don't know what a peddler is. It's kind of this coin looking thing that doesn't take up a spot in your deck. And so you can't buy this if you have any coppers in play. It's a little bit hard to get, but once you get them, you can really accumulate them fast. There's some other things, of course, you can do. We talked about the VP tokens, remodel. Altogether, there's a diverse set of ways to produce coins, whether it's just buy a big thing, put a bunch of treasures in play and put a bank out, get a bunch of gold, King's Court, something that gives a little amount of coins, and suddenly because you King's Court, it gives a big amount of coins, these things. And then there's also following up with this. So really, Prosperity is actually a great set for this what can your deck do. So I'm giving it an A here. Alright, high-end strength, King's Court Collection. These absolutely dominate games. Collection games tend to end up looking very similar to one another. It's like, get collections, buy cheap actions, get your points with them. King's Court games, you could say the same thing, that King's Court is buy King's Court, king powerful things, do your stuff, but, powerful things is kind of non-specific, so these games do have a lot of variation. That said, King's Court does snowball, Collection also does snowball, a bit, like once you get going. And so, despite these being, I'm gonna say King's Court is a fun card, Collection's kind of an card. I'm giving this one a B. Low-end strength, Vault, Crystal Ball. Crystal Ball's probably the worst of the cards in the expansion, and even then, it says you may trash it on it to some card, and so there will be games where you get Crystal Ball. Similarly, Vault, we said it pays off drawing a lot, there will be games where you buy Vault, so, at the low end, we certainly have two things that you'll still gain a lot of, and so, despite, Crystal Ball maybe being a little bit frustrating at times, I'm giving this one an A-. Alright, most exciting card, it's this Peddler. Now you know what a Peddler is. It says +1 card, +1 action, +1 coin on it. During a player's buy phase, this costs 2 less per action card that you have that they have in play. And so, this is something that it has this 8 cost on it, but it doesn't actually cost 8. It wasn't in the expensive cards. What you're trying to do here is you're trying to play a bunch of action cards. This is something we like to do. You're trying to play a bunch of things that say plus buy. This is something we like to do. And then you get to pay it off by buying a bunch of Peddlers that instead of costing 8 actually cost 0. And so that's really fun because, you get up to like 6 or 7 Peddlers. One Peddler doesn't look like much +1 coin. 6 or 7 Peddlers looks like a lot +6 or 7 coins. So that's pretty sweet. And then the other thing is that, during your action phase, they still cost 8. So you have a remodel around, that Peddler can be remodeled to a province even though you bought it for 0. So this is all very, very cool. That said, because of what we talked about before, the first person to get these action cards played, the first person to get these plus buy cards out will tend to end up winning games a lot. And, whoever is first to do that, whether it's because they were first player to begin with or something randomly happened that's a little bit good for you, it can be a little bit snowbally. And so, despite this amazingness, I'm going to limit it to a B+ for that reason. Most unpleasant card, we talked about it before, it's Crystal Ball. And it's almost because it does say this you may trash it that makes you buy it. The reason is because you get this search space of 1 card on top of your deck, and you better hope it's a bad one. It's really tough to make work, and it's also kind of low pace, so it's this really weak thing that you have to buy, and it might not do what you want to anyways. That said, you're not really complaining about it. It's a good enough card that, you can't say it doesn't take it, just isn't nothing, and it is something that does something, and it does what it's supposed to do. You just might not have a great time doing it, and so for that reason, I'm giving it an A for this most unpleasant card. Alright, theme. It's supposed to be kind of this rich stuff theme, but the theme really only appears in the mechanics. I don't know that it so much appears in the card names, whatever. I'm giving this one a C. It's not there. I don't know if you noticed, but in general, there's a couple good pieces, but the artwork across Prosperity is not great. Treasure depictions are a little bit tough, and I don't know, it's just not a great thing, so I'm giving this one a D. The vibe on Prosperity, despite its issues, is actually pretty good. You do like buying expensive things. It makes you feel like you're doing more. And some of the things are pretty fun in it. You know, we talked about King's Court, Grand Market, playing a bunch of those, Peddler playing a bunch of those. So there's a lot of high highs in Prosperity, and so, you know, despite the other things dragging it down, if you get one of those cards in your kingdom, you will have a good time. Like, this is going to be a B+. Put it all together, you have a weighted average of 2.71. You know, it's a weak expansion. The second edition certainly helped it quite a bit. You know, bringing up this Most Unpleasant, bringing up this low end strength bit. But, you know, overall, it's fine. It's not a standout. It's not like the worst expansion ever. Should you end up buying Prosperity? I mean, yeah, you should end up buying Prosperity. It definitely has the experience, and as we said, it has those really high highs, so something that you want to experience, and so you have to buy it to get that.